Hello and welcome to the Leaderonomics show. In this modern day and age, online learning is a widespread concept adopted by many educational and corporate institutions. A great example of an engaging platform for online learning is KNOLSKAPE. Today, we speak to Rajiv Jayaraman, who is the founder and CEO of KNOLSKAPE. He will share with us his experiences in running a successful company. Also, we'll find out how his background in theatre, filmmaking, as well as his deep passion for technology, design, and education inspired him to build KNOLSKAPE. Join us in this episode of the Leaderonomics show with Roshan, Thiran.
Welcome to the Leaderonomics show. I'm with Rajiv Jayaraman. Rajiv, thanks so much for being here with us.
Pleasure to be here.
You're a very interesting background. You worked in Oracle for a bit, and now you have your own company, CEO and founder of KNOLSKAPE.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about how you got to where you got to today.
Sure. So I did my education in India. So I did my engineering in a premier engineering school in India called BITS Pilani. Focused on computer science, and then went off to do my master's in the US. Again, computer science was my passion back then.
Why computer science?
I guess the logical aspects of building programs and building things that impact lives of people. So that was what was fascinating me about computer science. So went off to the US, and
this was something you decided on yourself, not your parents had pushed you, or?
I think it was a little bit of social influence as well.
Okay.
So I would be lying if I told you that I had absolute clarity on what I wanted to do. There was a little bit of a groupthink as well that went on, but ultimately I think I made the right choice. More specifically inside computer science, I was fascinated by image processing and graphics, the visual elements of what can be done using computers. So that's what took me to the US. When I did my master's, I focused on image processing, and part of that was, really understanding complex 3D data sets, and how we can use computers to understand, be it health data or climate or weather. How do you understand that from using large computers? So I was focusing on what is called as cluster computing.
Okay.
How do you use a cluster of computers to understand something complex? And that led me to a job at Oracle in California. So I got into their cluster computing division.
With Oracle?
With Oracle.
Okay.
So this was in Redwood Shores, the headquarters. So I started off in a technology-led role, and I was developing a lot of products for Oracle, building high availability solutions, which means that, how do you make databases run in enterprises 24/7 without any failure? So from image processing and computer graphics to high availability, there's a little bit of a jump that happened, but I really enjoyed that. And in many ways, what you hear in the market today is cloud computing, right? The essence of that is precursor to that.
Yeah.
So it was a great training ground for me to get exposed to some of these complex systems.
And how did that lead to KNOLSKAPE?
Yeah,
so you were in Oracle a couple of years.
Yeah, a few years, in fact, almost six years. So I was, filing patents, developing products, and things like that. So it was, really an exciting role from an analytical thinking perspective. But what I was lacking was the creative element. And that's when I was in the Bay Area. There's a lot of Indian community in the Bay Area. So I ventured into filmmaking and theatre. So a lot of storytelling, and every weekend
This is on your own, or
on my own?
On your own. Okay.
Yeah, I was just exploring different facets of life, things that I really wanted to do when I was younger, but I was never able to do. So I ventured, and as it turned out, I realized that maybe I have some passion for it. Maybe I have a knack for it, because we were winning awards, getting recognized in the media. So that was a classic left brain, right brain situation. While at Oracle, I was filing patents, and weekends were devoted to storytelling.
Okay.
So
and storytelling in what sense? Like, you were going to stand up, or how?
Yeah, stand up, writing, scripts, directing stage plays, and things like that. So in a lot of ways, I think my training for leadership happened through that experience. although at Oracle, it was more of a formal environment. But working with a lot of experts in theatre where I had no idea how lighting worked or sound worked, but you had to get all these pieces together and put up an experience for the audience. And you get that feedback immediately, right? So it's a live environment, nothing can go wrong.
That's right.
So I think even today when I am in a pressure situation, I look back at my theatre days and ask myself, what would I have done in that particular situation? So so that's how I sort of started thinking about what next, because technology and storytelling, two completely different worlds. So that's when the idea for KNOLSKAPE I think came about. So I did my MBA from INSEAD. So I wanted to take some time off, think about what I want to do in life.
And that was because you had this conflict that was
which was unresolved.
That was playing with you.
Yes. So I wanted to take a quick pit stop, think about, reflect, and it seemed like a good option to go to France at that point in time.
It's always a good option to go to France.
Right. And because I've never been there, I thought a new environment will help me think deeper about what I really want to do. So from there to Singapore, so INSEAD has a Singapore campus. So I landed up there, and it was during one of those courses that I did at INSEAD that the idea actually came to me. So we were playing the simulation game as part of this organizational behavior course, and so it was a software program and a lot of storytelling, and so it seemed like magically something came to me, and it was in a domain that I really enjoyed, education, where I was previously involved in some charitable activities with education as well. So it seemed to all fit in. So I parked that idea for a little while and let it percolate a little bit, and then I started looking around to see if there are more products like this in education, because even at INSEAD, a top B school, I had problem connecting with a few courses like financial derivatives and things like that. From a concept standpoint, you would understand it, but the problem I had was I didn't know why this prof was teaching me this, or what is the real world relevance.
And the application
bit of it. And overall, when you look at it, education and corporate training seems to be ailing from this disconnect. The thinking versus doing. Concept wise, everyone understands it, but how do you apply it is always a challenge. So I thought this could be an interesting way of solving that problem of this disconnect. So I looked around to see if there are more such products for finance, for strategy. It turned out that there weren't any, right, or too many of these products, even at a top institution like INSEAD. So, and I was fortunate that I got an opportunity to incubate the company at INSEAD when
So it was incubated in Singapore?
In Singapore. So the first year of KNOLSKAPE, the company that I'm currently the founder and CEO of, we incubated at the INSEAD Singapore campus. And I couldn't have asked for a better place because I was able to bounce off ideas with the top minds in the management space, and the ability to see it in action. When the executives were using the products that we were developing, we saw what worked, what did not work. Even from a user experience standpoint, how do we design software products? So that's the start of KNOLSKAPE.
Fantastic story. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back here with Rajiv, here on the Leaderonomics show. I'm back with Rajiv Jayaraman. Rajiv, it's been a good conversation so far. And you were talking a little bit about starting up KNOLSKAPE and how you came about doing that. And as we explore a little bit, I'm sure, in the early years, as you first started up KNOLSKAPE, I'm sure you had some challenges, obstacles, issues. Talk us through that and tell us some of the insights you got from that.
Sure. So the biggest obstacle that we faced was that the whole concept of gamification, that learning can be gamified. I think that notion was probably not well understood back then, because across cultures, I think we take learning very seriously, right? Back in India, we find parents would sell their homes to get their kids educated. It's taken very, very seriously, right? And when you say that you can gamify it, it's somehow not accepted because
does it seem like dilution?
Dilution or trivializing learning.
The whole thing,
But the reality is, so far in the last 150 years, if you look at the history of learning, we've somehow managed to industrialize this whole process, where the so-called expert comes in and delivers a lecture, and the participants, need to absorb it and do something with it, right? So this whole process is provider-centric, or the expert centric. It is not learner centric. Now, with technology, it is now possible to shift that power back to the learner. And in fact, the realization, it happened recently as well. When I was playing with my daughter on an iPhone or an iPad, she is able to almost beat me in a lot of games, right? And as a parent, I'm very proud of her, but as somebody much older to her and somebody who has done computer science and all that, I'm really ashamed of myself. And it struck me that, these kids are growing up in an environment where things are very learner centric. They are learning in a very self-directed fashion, and that maximizes their learning potential.
And also at their own pace.
At their own pace. And there's quick feedback that comes their way. They know exactly where they stand. So when it comes to pedagogy, so there's a lot of science behind it. Pedagogy is a science where or method where something is designed for the learner and it is delivered. And andragogy, of course, is something that is more adult learner centric, where the assumption is that the learner is intelligent and allow the person to try out, experiment and fail, and learning will happen in the process. And the realization that happened to me was my daughter was getting an andragogic environment, whereas when I go to a training program, I'm getting a pedagogic environment where I don't have the power to decide my learning outcome, right? So I think that's the fundamental change that needs to happen. Where
so I guess the struggle would be to educate the mass, or educate organizations specifically that we need to embrace this change because all around us we see that change happening. But at the corporate learning space, this was not happening fast enough. Right?
Fast enough, yeah. So and also it is tied to the trend that when you look, you observe your life as a consumer. You've got an app for hailing a cab. You've got an app for ordering food. You've got all of those. But somehow when you come into an organization, it seems like the 1990s, right? Where it's monolithic systems and someone decides what's good for you. So it's the one size fit all approach. I think that we need to revisit, and that's probably the biggest mindset block that happened, in the early days of KNOLSKAPE, where gamification and learning didn't go fit in together.
How did you overcome it?
So we started giving these organizations a taste of what is possible, right? When we started setting up experience centers or day-long workshops where they would get themselves immersed, that's when they saw the power of it, right? And from there on, people started believing it. And by then, gamification as a term also caught on, right? And even in the West, a lot of research has been done around learner-centric systems and why it is important to gamify things. Because ultimately, no matter how important learning is, at an individual level, we do seem to have some motivational issues. I would compare it with going to the gym. If you ask a lot of people, would you like to go to the gym? I think the answer is yes. But how many of us tend to actually do it? Again, there is a gap between wanting to do it and actually doing it. And where is a gap? Mostly it is in the motivational front. Same case with learning. If you take a lot of these online, MOOCs, fantastic courses delivered by fantastic people, but then the completion rate is around 5%. Now, where is the problem? The problem is there are no motivational structures, right? So, and I think that's where gamification comes in. And once companies started seeing that with this shift of power to the learner, we need something else to accompany it, and gaming is a great way to engage people.
And so how does KNOLSKAPE work? Talk us through a little bit about what you guys do at your organization.
Sure. So we develop a lot of gamification platforms and products for professional development, starting from an individual contributor all the way to becoming the business leader. So we've got products and solutions that will handhold people through those transitions. So there's a classic leadership pipeline by Ramcharan, where we talk about the different stages and transitions that need to happen. So those are quantum jumps that happen in a person's life, and we need to deliver it at the right time when the person needs help, and it needs to be experiential.
And how do you make that experiential?
So we make it through simulation games where the participant would get immersed in a certain situation, and there are a lot of things happening in that environment, and the participant is learning by doing. And they are taking decisions, right? And with every decision, they are getting a feedback, and in that complex environment, at the end of that, they get a report which talks about what they have done in the game.
Okay.
So in a very quick
almost like an assessment of
their capabilities,
gaps and their strengths and
yes.
so on. Okay.
Yes. So if you compare this with let's say a survey or a questionnaire does not have the context, right? So a person gets a short paragraph and a few options, and most people know how to game that and pick the seemingly right options. Whereas in a simulated environment, it's a complex scenario. There is a goal to be achieved. You've got your resources, just like any other consumer app that you would have played. You've got those resources. How do I tactfully use these resources to achieve my goal? And that brings out the essential traits of the leader or the manager, and we are able to capture that as data points, which enables us to produce the report.
Amazing. So I mean, what's the success rate? I mean, to some extent, how has this been something that's just caught on like fire, and you've seen your business grow tremendously? Yeah.
So we currently work with around 125 clients across 10 countries.
Okay.
And so the patterns are and the needs are very similar. So the Gen Y millennials coming into the workforce, and they have no patience to sit for an entire day. How do you deliver something that is impactful and engaging at the same time?
In bite sizes.
Bite-sized learning.
And this is done through mobile and through other technologies?
Yes, mobile and on the web as well.
Sure.
I think the key word is engagement, right? So we can't have systems that go for a day long or 2 day long. Can we do it in a shorter period of time? And also from a business standpoint, can we provide data which will suggest that this person is ready or not ready, and what are the gaps, and it should be helping the organization as well.
Fabulous. I still want to tap your brain on some advice that you can impart to entrepreneurs and people who are struggling in their businesses. So we'll be right back here with Rajiv here on the Leaderonomics show. I'm with Rajiv Jayaraman, and the founder and CEO of KNOLSKAPE. Rajiv, we're going into our special challenge round, Thinkonomics round, and I'm going to give you a couple of questions you to answer really fast.
Sure.
Right? Okay, we'll start with this. If you had all the money in the world, how would you change the world?
I think I would focus on basic education. I think education is a tool for transforming people at a very fundamental level. So I think I would put that money on put it to work for education.
All right, so let's see. What is the one thing you have not done that you really want to do before you die? What's holding you back?
So maybe I'll direct a film, going back to my passion of storytelling. What's holding me back?
Hollywood blockbuster.
Blockbuster or a Bollywood one.
Bollywood. Oh, even better. With some dancing.
So what's holding me back? I guess my current priorities. I really am passionate about what I'm doing at KNOLSKAPE, which is really working well to integrate my passion. So I don't really miss not directing a film, but I guess someday.
So we'll hold you up. Maybe we'll get you to direct a film with us.
Sure.
That'll be great. Okay, what is wrong with the world today? How should you fix it?
I think what's missing in the world is compassion. So I think while we are all chasing profits and money, somewhere I do believe that sustainability is not getting its due share. Sustainability from an environment perspective or people perspective. So I'd like to see a lot more compassion and love in business.
Okay, fantastic, and time's up. So
sure.
Good. So you made that round relatively easily.
Okay.
Let me ask you a couple more questions. I think it's interesting, your background. I'm sure a lot of young people would, kind of listen to this interview and say, hey, Rajiv, tell me how I can be like you.
Yeah.
What advice would you give me, if I'm just, finishing up my university and I'm coming out to the world, and I want to be like you, I want to start my own company, I want to, do something that's game-changing.
Yeah.
What advice would you impart to them?
So I think the first advice would be to find what you're passionate about. I think that's the number one difference.
It takes a long time to do that.
To do that.
It took you a couple of years to figure out.
Do that. So, pre-advice to that is try and immerse yourself in as many areas in life as possible by volunteering. That's one advice that I would try to give to as many.
And you did a lot of that?
Did a lot of that, and in a lot of ways theatre happened because of that, right? So it was a completely unknown field for me. I just dabbled into it and then found myself. And I like to think that the more you get lost in your search, the more you will find yourself. So to find yourself, you have to lose yourself in something.
Interesting.
So
philosophically and profound. Very
that's
good.
right. So and try and volunteer as much as possible in areas that you're not familiar with. Find yourself, and I think you will find your passion, and then put all your energy into it.
Okay, very good. Let me, if a group of CEOs, just imagine you had to advise a group of CEOs, and what sort of nugget of wisdom would you impart to this group of CEOs?
Yeah, so I'm sure we are all familiar with the VUCA world. Things are changing so fast and at a very furious pace. I do believe that for organizations to survive this kind of a rapid pace, we need to think hard about being a learning organization and an agile organization that constantly learns about what's happening around and what's happening within. So I think that's a crucial success factor for all kinds of organizations.
And I think that's another struggle that CEOs has, right? How do you create that agile, nimble, yet scalable organization, right? How do you? What advice would you give to them?
Sure. So the first thing is, I think we are now, if you look at the status quo, a lot of organizations are preparing their talent for the past. So the kind of topics that we are trying to cover are not really in line with where the organization will be in the future. So I think there's a need to fundamentally revisit, what are we training our people on? Are we making them future ready? Right? I think from a concept level that needs to be done. And second, from a delivery standpoint, a lot more can be done through learner-centric systems, as we spoke about earlier, using gamification, anytime, anywhere learning. So why should all the learning happen inside the classroom? Can we do it just in time? And also making use of analytics. So far, I think the whole area of HR in general, I think we've not used analytics the way it should be. And so if you look at how marketing has evolved as a function, 5 to 7 years ago, they were not using analytics as much as they are doing right now. And that function has completely been transformed by digital. So now, how do we use those principles in HR and fundamentally transform the way HR functions? I think the next 5-6 years, I'm pretty optimistic that HR as a function will transform because of digital.
Fantastic. We've just out of time, but it's been a fascinating conversation, Rajiv. Really, thank you for
Pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks.
All right.